A sustainable business model is probably the most pressing question for any publisher today, or at least one of them, I guess. So the question is, consolidate around one revenue stream, diversify, subscribing, advertising, any other. We take a look at different options now, who is doing it best, and what to expect in the near future. And I'm very happy to introduce Brendan Paine, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at Independent Journal Review in the US.
Hello. So in covering, I think this has been a popular topic, revenue and monetization. And in the brief time we have, I'm going to skip to some of the things that are a little more novel, particularly live video, and explain a little bit of the context of where we come from. Because while one monetization strategy works for us, we're a very different company than, say, others. And by that I mean we're in the news business. So can I see quickly a show of hands, who else here is in the news business? Breaking and covering news. Not bad. So a little bit of a representation. We're also a very small company, so that story kind of frames the context and how we think about things. So I'll start here. Trust is at an all-time low for media in the United States, and we're an American news company. So this is the vacuum that allowed our company to grow. We're still very small, nascent, 3 years basically old, but we're already one of the top 10 news sites in the United States, but largely for reasons that I don't think are terrific. If you look at some of the American institutions that carry confidence, things like the military, science, the Supreme Court, media right now is 6%. And this is particularly poignant with millennials, with younger audiences who make up the majority of our audience. So I'll talk about that in a second. These are some of our statistics, which we share, and I promise you these are not here in any way in a boastful sense. In fact, these give me cold comfort because as a small publisher, we're really reliant on Facebook. We're a social publisher as well. But if you can't see them from where you are, we do about 30 million monthly unique visitors, about 125, 130 million page views. And our audience is fairly diverse in the political spectrum, but it does skew younger. And on the far right is probably the most notable. 87% of our traffic today is mobile or tablet. So they're consuming news in a very different way. What is also different, and it's been helpful for us, but presents challenges, is Facebook. We have over 20 million Facebook followers. And in fact, our social actions is one of the key metrics we describe. I know that they were just saying page views. I heard in the last panel, page views and audience isn't a good metric by itself. We completely agree. In fact, one of the things that we check most is what we call social efficiency. So this is every time someone reads an article, do they like it? Do they share it? Do they forward it? Do they take a social action? So this is according to NewsWhip. And if you look, IJR, our company, far outpaces BuzzFeed, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, HuffPo, The Guardian. It allows us to punch above our weight because we build our content, we call it built to travel. We build it so that it gets shared. Similarly, this was on election night, where there was huge, this has been a year of extraordinary political theater in the United States, obviously. On election night, we were almost twice that of the New York Times in terms of people seeing something and acting on it. So Facebook is our greatest distribution outlet. And the question has been posed, well, how do we diversify from Facebook, get away from it? And that's important. But for us, this is the ocean in which we swim. There is no way to get away from it. And in fact, there's nothing else we can tap into. We could have that many millions of engaged people. So Facebook is it is our life right now, whether we like it or not. So I'll turn to live quickly, which is one of the more interesting new things to do. And the first question is, as a news publisher, we had to ask ourselves, is live new? And I think obviously it's not. Live has been done in television very, very well for 50 or 60 years. People have experimented with live on the internet, and I think with mixed results. But live doesn't tend to play as well because the internet, you have unlimited distribution, right? So it's a little bit different from the TV model. This was the set we built for Donald Trump's inauguration, all in gold, right? Because he likes gold. And we can talk about politics a little bit later. But what is new? I would posit what is new is Facebook Live. Facebook Live allows us to tap into a hugely engaged audience in a way that they can promote and that works very well. So our inauguration coverage drew over almost 18 million Facebook users, audience engaged, which is a fairly stunning number for a single event and something that, by the way, was widely televised. So what I will do now, we'll go through some examples, what we've learned in live and what we think works, particularly 3 things that work in live, kind of based on this. The first is take people where they can't go otherwise. And the good news is with technology, and we try not to get too hung up on the technology, but everyone can be a reporter or at least a content creator. So with a phone, someone can be out there gathering information for you. So we had people right there at the inauguration bringing people very close to what it felt like. That was 3 million live views and 16 million Facebook engagements over something like a 6-hour period. Second thing, this again in the United States, it's a bit of an exceptional political climate, but there are a lot of protests and marches now. So wherever possible, we try to arm young journalists with phones to go there. Go and bring it. What is it like? What is it like? Is there antipathy in the crowd? Is the crowd, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they apathetic? What are the people saying? And you can put people in various places and cover this in a way you never could before. So it's very different from the model of CNN rolling up the truck with their celebrity interviews and all of that. We've got maybe 10 people making a lot less than the CNN anchor in the audience with their phone, but covering it in a very raw way. Similarly, create a concept that kind of works, so that's engaging. This was a bit funny. We went to I don't know if Bernie Sanders, he was a socialist candidate for president in the Democratic Party in the United States. We went to one of his rallies, and we asked, can you describe Hillary Clinton in 1 word to the audience? And so you get some interesting, right? So you tap into some emotion, it's funny, but also that had 1 million engagements. And that was one reporter, and that was an idea he came up with while he was there. So really creating room to let people innovate and create the stories where there is one. Another is a concept of winners and losers. So for people, we had a column that we run each week, who's up and who's down. It's just kind of a weekly scorecard in Washington. We run this live. Our reporter was holding a dog for a while. You try to do things to make it less staid and stodgy, and it ends up working. And so this has actually been quite popular. That's content we would have already created, which surprised us. And then finally, what we found in live is oftentimes the more raw, the better. So we had a reporter here covering the Donald Trump party when they won, election night. And he, by chance, happened to get Sarah Palin for about a 4-minute monologue, who tends to say whatever's on her mind anyway. But this was raw. You were watching and you felt like, I have no idea what she's going to say next, but I want to see it. So this works. And again, you can implant reporters to do this in ways that were very seldom possible before. And we found you get a lot of people willing to actually speak to you. Very few people walk away and say, I have no comment or I won't talk to you. Similarly, our White House correspondent, Aaron McPike, does really informal, impromptu interviews at the White House and Capitol Hill the same way. No pressure. We're not necessarily going to beat you over the head right away. It's got to be a bit cordial, but it also can be funny. So this is better. We find politicians are receptive to it, and we're trying to follow the line of being responsible journalists, but also not someone that they see and then run away from, because then you have no coverage whatsoever. So, and that's all. There's always tension. That's a fine line to walk. So, how does it monetize? And this is tricky. The first thing I would say is we find that business model and content creation is inextricable. You cannot separate them. We never, at the top of the business, have discussions where business and the content strategy are not at the table, because they need to work in a complementary way. For live so far, we found a few variants. Of course, if you have Formula One, that's a very captive audience. You pay a lot for those rights. And Facebook is running in-banner ads or in-stream. They're not doing pre-roll like YouTube. So they'll do this, and they'll do it in a revenue share capacity, which I think is okay for publishers. But so far, we've found the money from this model to be a little bit underwhelming, a little bit like Facebook Instant Articles. And I'd be interested if anyone else has had great results with it. Our results have been, I think, kind of meager. But there are some benefits. When we run live, first of all, we can archive that content, and people come back to it. So we're driving page views. And secondly, we're a programmatic advertising house right now, and that's because we're small. We do have a direct sales force, Most of our revenue comes from programmatic, from the ad exchanges and things like this, right? Without getting into too much Facebook voodoo, we know that the algorithm right now scores well for live. So when you have large engaged audiences, we see that our news does better in the Facebook news feed, trailing at least 2 weeks. So 2 weeks after the inauguration, with what I just showed you, we had record traffic. A lot of that driven by a favorable, virtuous cycle on the Facebook news feed. And Facebook won't be specific with this, but we know for a fact that you have positive momentum and negative momentum. And they are scoring the algorithm well for live right now. So for us, because Facebook drives so much of our traffic, at least 80% of our referral traffic comes from Facebook, we have to take that into account, and it works well. So for that reason alone, we found if you just do a little bit better in a news feed, you can have another 5 million unique visitors in a given week. And that translates into hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising revenue. So what have we learned so far? And this is new. It's really only been out for 4 or 5 months that we've been experimenting. The first is try to anticipate how this plays on a first and second screen, especially for us in a mobile audience. Is the second screen going to add to the experience at all? And if not, then think about maybe why are we doing this? The second, I think this is probably the most important point, Facebook Live was created for people, not pros. So grainy, kind of super professional content works less well. Something that's grainy, raw, looks a little unexpected, seems to perform very, very well, and it feels more authentic. Third, we haven't publicized or promoted live coverage yet. You can, but it's expensive to go out and market that. So you kind of have to ask yourself, is this built to travel? Will someone like this enough to share it? For us, that's the key metric. Because without that, without the viral possibility, it probably isn't worth, the concept may not have legs. And then finally, Facebook also readily admits they're experimenting. So this is very new. I feel like we have great relationships at Facebook, but they're constantly experimenting, and sometimes when they can do things to their algorithm, much like Google used to, that could blow you out. So you have to be very, very careful. So just know, you're dealing with a company that I think has their own interests in mind before yours as a publisher. So who else is doing it well? There's a couple of interesting examples. I'll start on the bottom right. If any of you have heard of Cheddar in the United States, this was started by John Steinberg, who was the founder of BuzzFeed. And they broadcast live from the New York Stock Exchange every day. So they are aiming to be the next CNBC or Bloomberg, but for internet television. And it's hard work. They have to cover content all day. It's much like a TV network, but it does perform pretty well. And he's got vision. They've got great backers. We think they're doing it well. Moving to the left-hand side, this is BBC. This is much more serious, but they had live coverage of how they train their SWAT police and their anti-terrorism units, which we thought was very well done. Because again, you're bringing someone into something they may not normally see. And that was provided in cooperation with the police, obviously, but it was fascinating. And BBC, we think, are doing interesting things like that. That's on the higher end of content. On the other end of the spectrum, I finish with BuzzFeed and the watermelon, which I don't know how familiar you are here. BuzzFeed in the United States put a watermelon on a table, and then they put a rubber band around it, and they kept going until the watermelon exploded. Took, I don't know, a couple of days. That had 15 million people tune in to watch when this would happen. So it's strange, it's kooky, but it works. And there I don't really know how to say the formula. I just think sometimes creative, kooky things work on the internet. And BuzzFeed generally is, I think, ready to take risks. So finally, and in conclusion, things to ask yourself before you go live, right? The first we have to ask is, should it be live? Television does live very well. The internet does live sometimes, but it's also pretty exhausting. And you need to think, am I really offering something unique that can't be replicated here and that will get shared? So that's first, right? What does live bring to the coverage? Secondly, pre-taping might be better. Oftentimes, the real-time nature of something isn't as important to the audience as you may think. And doing things in live is not only expensive, it's exhausting. And another piece that we learned kind of the hard way, there are a lot of best practices forged over 50 years in television that are worth paying attention to, right? Having a producer, having a booker, someone who gets people on, having access to talent, having and training people for on-air sensibilities. How do you fill dead air? How do you make eye contact with the camera and not look robotic? We thought this would be easy, and it was hard. We ended up really making some mistakes early on. So there's a lot to learn from TV if you're going to try it. I think the good news is you don't have to pay someone $20 million a year like Megyn Kelly or someone like these celebrities. We can do it with younger people, but they do need training. And I guess I would finish with this. This kind of goes for all publishing right now, but I think the good news is anyone can do live, but the bad news is also that anyone can do live. So this is our studio. I think it cost us all of $40,000 to build with all the equipment. Most television studios probably cost $10, $20 million. So you can do it with a small amount of money, but having content and experience that breaks through, I think, is also difficult because anyone can do it. And this is also the problem with publishing. We see lots of very interesting, small, scrappy publishers, but you've got to offer your audience something better to stay above them. So this is where we are now. Welcome any questions, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. No. Thank you very much. Time for 3 minutes for questions. I have one. Please, I go for yours.
Yeah, hi. F1 coverage, aren't there digital rights? I mean,
that's under digital. I think they played with it. That's where we got the screenshot, but that's obviously controlled by Ecclestone or whoever controls F1 now. And I think most people in sports, like sports and live, probably work better than anything else right now. So that's why it's very highly controlled and expensive. I think same for the Premier League and La Liga and the Olympics and things like this.
so how exactly does that live work?
Does what work?
The live work, if the digital rights are controlled, then do you give a commentary on what's happening?
Yeah,
what,
no,
exactly?
that picture wasn't from us. We did
okay.
not, no, we don't, because we would have to pay richly to be able to cover Formula One, and it's also not our audience.
Okay.
So right now, the only places that are doing it are, I'm in the realm of opinion here, but sports leagues who are trying to reach young people who aren't watching television but might watch on their mobile phone.
They have an interest.
Then it makes sense.
I'm sorry, and I didn't really get the place where you've been monetizing somewhere. Did I miss something?
It's all through traffic back on our site. So Facebook offers a revenue share. So if they sell the advertising, which is mostly how it happens, they'll split it with you, 60-40, 50-50, for an in-banner ad. They're not running pre-roll advertising or skippable like you'd see on YouTube, for example. Yeah. We've seen very little revenue from that. It's all been from referral traffic coming back to our site, and then that having a virtuous effect where more people come to the sites. So it's all programmatic. CPM page views.
Thank you. Your question.
Yes, sorry. But on your site, you don't have many ads, or?
We have no on
I
our
could
average,
just find one.
No, we have ads for sure. On our average mobile page, we'll have 1 or 2 ads and also a content partner. In this case, it's Outbrain.
Yeah, because it's Outbrain and.
Yeah, there's others. There's Taboola and Rev Content, and those companies are out there. So it's a combination of programmatic ads and content partners.
Because your website is very, it's very clean. It's almost look like that you don't have ads.
I love to hear that. We always argue about how many ads is too many, because you want the user experience to be okay. But listen, that's the only way that we're going to keep the lights on for now. We're too small, and we don't have a big enough brand to drive subscriptions like the Washington Post. No way. The good news is we only have 40 people, so our cost base is very low. So for now this works. I don't think it's the revenue model forever.
2 questions to the target group. Who are the most people that are watching your live things? What age is it?
Millennial. And by that, probably it's 18 to 28 years old.
Okay. What length is the average length? They really stay with these videos?
It depends. On average, 20 to 30 seconds.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, in and out.
Okay.
But then they'll comment on it, then they might return.
That's another. I would like to know about brand loyalty, something like that. If they are disappointed 2 times, they don't come back.
No, well, and this is one of the challenges with Facebook. The brand loyalty can be very small because people come in and they leave through the side door. They don't come through your homepage. So building our brand in that environment is probably our biggest opportunity and challenge.
Okay.
Completely.
And last question from my part for the moment. Whom are you onboarding? Is it really mainly journalists, or are you really picking people like, say, comedians, interesting personalities, because they have respect in the community, or they go beyond the fences, or anything like that? Who are these guys?
We're trying both. We certainly don't have the depth of investigative journalism you'd find in the New York Times or the Washington Post, and we won't be that
or Vice or anything.
No,
Yeah.
not yet. But for younger people especially, news and entertainment is really kind of one. They're inseparable, so it doesn't have to be boring. So we're trying to make it fun, but we have a newsroom as well. We have journalists, and we train them. But also the average age at our company, I want to say, is 27 years old. So I'm probably the second. I'm the oldest guy. Yeah.
On your company. What a
Unbelievable.
pity. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
For sharing.